Hello folks, thanks for checking out this video. As you can tell from the title of the video, I'm going to go ahead and create a character for my game Peace the RPG. It is a high fantasy RPG. The PDF for the basic edition of the game has been released. If you go to facebook.com/Peace the RPG, peace such as peace and love, you can find the PDF. If you go to my YouTube channel, Confessions of a Frustrated Gamemaster, under any of the recent videos, you can also find the links. It's on Google Drive and on Dropbox. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm going to be making a character for the basic edition of the game. This happens to be, excuse me, the core rulebook, which is the full edition of the game, or at least it was 75% complete when I had Lulu print me out a copy of this. I really love this. I had to have a physical copy in my hand. So there's not quite as much content in the basic edition of the game, and I'll tell you when the differences come up. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this and start the process of creating a character. Here, there you go. Get to the creation area, create. Starts here. There you go. And there are 10 steps to creating a character in the game, and I'm going to go ahead and get started right now. So the first step in creating your hero for Peace is to determine or choose your hero's vocations. Now, vocations are not classes. They are a general overarching theme for your hero. There's warriors, there are adventurers, and there are adepts. So warriors, of course, are your fighters. Adventurers are a mixture of the archetypes that you would consider somewhat fighter, somewhat magic users, or full-blown magic users. So character archetypes like bards, rangers, rogues, and clerics are where you would find your adventurers. And then finally, you have your full-blown magic users, and those fall under your adepts. So the first step is to choose the overarching theme for your character or vocation. And I think I'm going to go ahead and go with an adept. In the full version of the game, there are 3 types of full-blown casters. You have your arcane casters. I call them ciphermancers. In the setting, those are the wizards of the setting. They're called ciphermancers. And when a ciphermancer begins their apprenticeship at first level, they learn the basic fundamentals of being a ciphermancer. And then at second level, they choose the arcane art to which they're going to dedicate their life. And in the full version of the game, you have elementalists, you have necromancers, and illusionists. And the basic edition of the game, you only have elementalists starting at second level, and the basic edition actually only goes up to, excuse me, only goes up to third. And then you have, in the core version of the game, you have priests and you have shaman. So ciphermancers, priests, and shaman. In the basic edition of the game, you only have ciphermancers and priests. So I think I'm going to make a priest. I haven't made a priest in a long time, so I think I'm going to go ahead and try to do that. So my character is going to be an adept. Here is a hero sheet for the game, and I'm just going to write adept under vocation, and it's going to be a priest. Why don't I just put priest here? I'll do that. And then, so that step is knocked out. Step number 2 out of 10 is purchase your attack stats. So attack stats are, as you can see here at the top of the character sheet, these are the stats that are used when heroes and NPCs attack. In conflicts, you can attack using warfare, which of course is punching, kicking, biting, using a crossbow or staff. Influence is taunting, befriending, frightening, and power is when you cast spells. So during conflicts, players or heroes or NPCs can choose any of these methods to deal with the threats that are in front of them. So as part of hero creation, step 2 is purchasing these stats. Now you get, as you see here, you get 22 points in order to purchase those stats. And depending on your vocation, that will determine how inexpensive it is for you to increase these stats. Now, for an adept, that's what we're making here. Warfare costs 4 points per +1. Influence costs 3 points per +1, and power, that's where an adept really shines, only costs 2 points per +1. So each attack stat during hero creation starts at 1d6. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in right there. All of them start at 1d6. Then each +1, you spend points. You spend those 22 points to increase. Now, the progression of the attack stats during hero creation and throughout the hero's career goes like this. So they start at 1d6, then you go to 1d6 +1, 1d6 +2, 1d6 +3, and the next increase takes you to the next highest d6, so 2d6. Then you go 2d6 +1, 2d6 +2, and so on. So during hero creation, that's how you increase your attack stat. And what I like to do with my hero adepts is I like to put a little something in their warfare, even though they're not going to use it a whole lot or at all. The reason for that is each attack stat has an associated defensive stat. Warfare is associated with defense. Influence is associated with willpower, and power is associated with resistance. These defensive stats determine how many times enemies get to attack you by spending their attack points. So the higher your defensive stat is, the harder it is for enemies to get multiple attacks against you. And I kind of like that idea for my adept. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make this 1d6. I'm going to make it a 1d6 +2. So every +1 that I put in warfare as an adept costs me 4 of my 22 points. So I'm going to go ahead. So that's going to be 8 points. So I'm going to write that down here. 22 minus 8. So that's going to be 16. If I'm correct there, 4, 6. No, that's going to be 14. Sorry. Going to be 14. There you go. So that's going to be 1d6 +2. I'm not going to put anything in my influence. All the rest of my points, my other 14 points are going to go into power. So because increasing my power +1, each +1 only costs me 2 points. That's 7 increases. So I'll count it all for you. So my power starts at 1d6, of course. Then you go 1d6 +1, 1d6 +2, 1d6 +3, 2d6, 2d6 +1, 2d6 +2, 2d6 +3. So my adept is going to have 2d6 +3. I'm going to go ahead and make that change. And then we have a nice little chart here that tells you what these ratings and these attack points mean. So my warfare of 1d6 +2 means that my priest is trained in warfare. So he has received a little bit of training in how to handle himself in mundane warfare, so he can defend himself a little bit. And his influence is 1d6. So that 1d6 and an attack stat means that he doesn't have any outstanding aptitude, no outstanding aptitude. And the 2d6 +3 in an attack stat, 2d6 +3 means he is well trained and experienced. So that sounds pretty good to me. So that completes step 2 of the process. Moving on. The next step is doing your defensive stats. So as I said, all of your attack stats have a defensive stat that is associated with it, and your rating in your attack stat determines what your defensive stat is. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate that right now. 1d6 +2 means that I get a 6 in my defense. So I like that because it makes me a lot more difficult to get multiple attacks against when it comes to warfare. And as you see, if I stayed at 1d6, my defense would have only been 4, or if I only bought a +1, it would be a 5. So I really like that, and you'll see another reason why I like that a little bit later in the process. My influence is only 1d6 is only 1d6. So I have a 4 willpower. And then finally, my power is 2d6 plus 3. So I go all the way down here, and that means I have a 9 in my resistance. So I'm really hard to get multiple attacks against when someone is casting spells. Makes sense because I am a magic user. So that's really quick, really fast. That's the step 3, recording my defensive stats. Step 4 is where I calculate my traits. So I'll go through this. So first, I have to calculate my hit points. And everyone is familiar with hit points. Hit points is a measure of the hero's physical elusiveness and survivability. You'll learn more about that later in the book. And yeah, once a hero's hit points gets to 0 during a conflict, they are out of the combat. They become unconscious. And you calculate your hit points by multiplying your defense stat by 5. So that's 30. So that is something else that makes a lot of sense when you are purchasing your attack stats is your defense determines how many hit points you have. That's another great reason why I like to put a little bit of something in my adepts warfare, even though they're not going to be doing a ton of punching or kicking or anything or firing bows, usually. Then next, composure is equal to your willpower times 5. Composure is a measure of the hero's mental health. So it's like hit points for the character's mind. So if someone is using their charisma to affect them, or if there's some type of magical effects which causes them to take some type of mental damage, composure is your character's mental hit points. So that's a 20. Then you have starting heroes begin with a 1d6 battle scars. Battle scars are your heroes' bennies or action points that allows for rerolls and other benefits. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a d6 here. I'm going to roll that. 1. So my hero starts the game with only 1 battle scar to do rerolls. That's not really good, but it is what it is. And the hero's influence damage is next, and the hero's influence damage equals his willpower stat plus 2. So willpower is 4. Over here is where the influence damage is. So that would be 6. So when my character does an influence attack, tries to frighten or taunt or befriend, they do 6 points of damage to the target's composure. Next, you have the hero's influence armor is equal to his willpower divided by 2, round up. So that would be 2. And as you probably have already figured out, influence armor, what it says here is influence armor is a hero's innate ability to resist the manipulation of his emotions by others. So whenever someone does an influence attack against my character, the influence damage they do is reduced by my influence armor before it goes on to my composure. So it's basically damage reduction for influence attacks. And then once my hero reaches 0 composure, they suffer what's called a breakdown based on what type of influence attack the adversary was doing. So that is figured out right there. And then other things like physical armor, max initiative, and power point traits are determined later in the hero creation process. So moving along. Great. Now, step 5, choose the hero's race and record the race's natural attribute ratings and racial abilities. So as you can see here, there are 6 races in the core version of the game. And the basic edition of the game, there are only 3. There are elves, orcs, and humans in the basic edition version of the game. Now, I'm going to do something maybe unique here for a priest character. I'm going to go ahead and make an elf. And the reason I say that is unique is because the humans in the game worship a single god, Kord, the god of balance. He actually saved this world thousands of years ago during what's called the Portal Wars. Essentially, the setting of the game was actually the home for the sources of all of the elements in the cosmos: fire, water, earth, and air. And the sources fed the rest of the cosmos, and beings from around the cosmos attacked the setting of the game thousands of years ago to try to gain control of those sources. It was actually the second time that this had happened. And Cord, who eventually became known as the god of balance, did an event called the Severing, where he shattered the cosmos and created the different planes of existence and prevented beings from around the cosmos from leaving the different planes of existence to try to invade, saving the cosmos from catastrophe. And the gods in the setting worship Cord, the god of balance. It is a monotheistic religion, and the other races of the setting actually have their own religious beliefs and don't generally worship Cord. So being an elf and being a priest for the god of Cord is kind of unusual because of that. But I'll come up with a background reason for my elf being a worshiper of a human god. Maybe they grew up in Fortress, which is the mightiest military and religious nation in the setting, and they worship Cord, the god of balance. So maybe for some reason he grew up in a human culture of Fortress. But he is going to be an elf, and I need to record my hero's racial natural attribute ratings. And as you can see, you have 10 attributes in the game: acrobatics, athletics, education, and strength. And I'm just going to go ahead and record all of that information. So an elf has a 4 in acrobatics, a 3 in both athletics and education, 2 in endurance, a 4 in knowledge, a 3 in perception and writing, a 2 in strength, a 5 in survival, and a 3 in thievery. All right, so I've recorded their natural abilities or natural attribute scores, and now I'm going to record their racial abilities. So elves have something called Quicksilver scarification. Basically, what Quicksilver is magical silver that elves can control with their mind. And Quicksilver can be as hard as iron or as fluid as liquid. And they can wear weapons. They can liquefy their Quicksilver weapons and wear them on their bodies as elaborate markings. And essentially, it allows them to ready the weapon as a free action. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a weapon for my elf. I'm going to give him a quarterstaff because he's a priest. He's not going to do a whole lot of fighting, but it's going to be a Quicksilver quarterstaff that he can wear somewhere on his body as a tattoo and arm himself with it if he needs to as a free action. It says Quicksilver scarification. One of the weapons you purchase at Hero Creation is a Quicksilver weapon. It may be readied as a free action. Then elves in the setting also get Wild Speak. You receive a 1d6 damage bonus to your influence attacks against natural creatures. So elves live in the wild, and they're really great in nature and very much connected to the natural world. So Wild Speak, write that down, plus 1d6 influence damage bonus to natural creatures. Okay. All right. And then they have night vision. They have night sight. You are not hindered by partial darkness. You may attack targets who are in total darkness. You may attack while in total darkness. So elves have night sight. I'll write that down. Night sight. And they have a move of 6. So on the front of the sheet, I'll write down their move of 6. And that completes that part. One more thing. Specializations. Each race starts the game with a particular specialization. And elves have knowledge animal lore because, again, they are very much a part of the natural world. Animal lore plus 2. And that's part of the knowledge attribute. So they get plus 2 when they're trying to identify animals. All right, next step in the process, and that is figuring out the languages for my hero. So here's the little chart right here that allows you to figure out languages. So it's based on the, wait a minute. I think I've skipped a part. Yeah, I did skip a part. Sorry. So the next step is, actually after figuring out my race, then step 6 is I have to finish off my attributes, because attributes are composed of 2 parts. Their natural rating, which comes from your race, and a train rating, which comes from what you have trained for up until this point in your adventuring career. So you get 16 points to divide amongst your attributes on a 1-for-1 basis. At first level, no more than 3 points may be applied to a single attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and max out my education. So that's 3. I'm going to max out my knowledge. That's another 3. So that becomes 6, and that becomes 7. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 in perception. So that makes that 5. So that's 8. And I have 8 more to go. Put 2 in ride, 2 in strength, 2 in survival, 2, 4, 6. And I'm going to put 2 in endurance. So 2, 4, 6. So that's 5, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16. So that's 16 points that I have divided amongst my attributes. And I'm going to go ahead and write down the total for each of them. That's 4, 5, 4, 7, and 3. So that looks really good to me. Now I can move on to pick out my languages. I knew I had done something wrong, because part of picking out your languages is applying your total education to figure out how many languages you speak. So this is the number of languages chart right here. And at the top, you have the education rating of the hero, and you find that education rating and it tells you how many languages your hero speaks. So with my education of 6, my hero speaks trade speak, native language, plus 2 other languages, as you see right there. So I'm going to go ahead and write down trade speak. I'm going to write down crown, which is the native language of elves. And then 2 other languages. So because I'm a priest and I fight evil and foul creatures to protect the innocent, I'm going to say that my priest understands the language of blood speak, which is spoken by infernals. So I'm going to write blood speak. And as I mentioned earlier, it is somewhat unusual for an elf to worship Kord, the god of balance, who is a human god. Elven culture, religiously, it's kind of their society is somewhat of do animism and imperial cultism. So yeah, it is very unusual for an elf to worship a human god. But let's say that, as I mentioned, my elf somehow was brought up or made part of Fortress, which is the greatest religious and military culture in human culture in the setting. So they are very much worshipers of the god of balance, Kord. And so if you look down here, Korkan is the native language of Fortress. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it only makes sense that my elf speaks Korkan, which is the Fortranite language. So those are the 4 languages of my elf. Now I'm going to go ahead and have to plug in my power. My power is getting low here. I'm surprised that the camera is still working, but thank goodness it is. All right, so I've plugged that in. Okay, so now that won't die on me. Now, the next step in hero creation, got our languages. So step 7, select vocation talent. So vocations are the maneuvers, tricks, tactics, and supernatural abilities learned by members of the hero vocations. These talents modify a hero's attack, permanently changes a hero's traits, and or allow a hero to perform actions to which he would normally not have access. So this is where my priest gets their spells, essentially. And I'm going to go ahead and look up what an adept gets. And you can look right here, first level hero. It says an adept, choose one, spell casting, prayer, or shamanism. The hero gains the chosen talent. Also choose 4 other first level adept talents for the hero. Record those choices on the hero sheet. So shamanism is not available in the basic edition of the game. So my only choices for the basic edition would either be spell casting, which is for the arcane casters in the world, cyphermancers, or prayer, which is the spell casting talent for priests. So obviously I'm going to choose prayer. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down, and we'll see what prayer says. Where is prayer? Right here. Right there. So prayer. You may use your power attack stat to make attacks. You begin first level with a power pool of 60 points to fuel your divine abilities. You may spend a battle scar to regain 20 power points, because the spell casting in the game uses a power point system to power your magic. And I'm going to go ahead and write prayer. So I have that, and now I get 4 other first level adept abilities. And I'm going to go ahead and pick an offensive ability, which happens to be right here on the other page, Light of Rebuke. So for 2 power points, plus a number of power points equal to the range to the furthest target up to 8 squares. After a successful damage check, deal your resistance +4 in hit point damage at first level. So that Light of Rebuke is going to be my my offensive spell. Light of Rebuke. And Light of Rebuke is going to do my resistance +4. So my resistance is +4 is 13. So every time I successfully hit a target, I'm going to do 13 points of damage. And that damage has the divine quality. So necrotic and infernal creatures in the game usually take additional damage from attacks with the divine quality. So that's really going to help me with attacking evil creatures, either necrotic or infernal. Then I think I'm also going to want a defensive talent or invocation. I shouldn't call them spells, because cyphermancers use spells, priests and shaman use invocation. And I think I'm going to do Shielding Guardian. Shielding Guardian is right here. So Shielding Guardian, 6 power points, and self. After a successful damage check until the end of the conflict, all adjacent attacks against you suffer -1. A -1 penalty to their damage check. So basically, in order to hit me with an adjacent attack, you're at -1 because of the Shielding Guardian invocation. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. So that is 2 of my 4 first level adept Shielding Guardian. Okay. Then I'm going to want I'm going to want a healing, because I am the priest and sometimes my companions are going to need healing. So I'm going to want to have a little bit of healing. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, Healing Hands. Yep, prayer or shamanism. So 5 power points touch. After a successful damage check, the target gains hit points equal to their defense plus 1d6. So I'm going to go ahead and take Healing Hands as my third. Healing Hands. And then one more. I think I'm going to do another one that helps my allies heal. I think I'm going to do Blessing of Regeneration. So Blessing of Regeneration is 2 power points plus range to furthest target after a successful damage check until the end of the conflict. Each time the target rolls a 4 to 6 on the fate die of an attack stat roll, he gains 3 HP. So essentially, when my ally that I've affected with this invocation, type invocation, rolls a 4 to 6 on a particular die when they're generating their attack points at the beginning of each turn. If they roll that number, they get 3 hit points back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Blessing of Regeneration. I like that. Blessing of Regen. So now I have the prayer talent and 4 additional other adept talents, all of which I qualify for because all of them fall under the prayer talent. And those are all of my talents. So the next step in the process of hero creation, I'm pretty sure, is purchasing gear. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So step 8 in the process. Get past all these talents here. All right, here's the gear. All right, step 8, purchase gear. So you have 110 shards to purchase gear. So shards, it's a crystalline substance, and this setting uses slivers of this crystalline substance that's mined from the crash of a meteorite in the setting. And what happened? This also happened during the Second Portal Wars, where the creatures or beings from other parts of the cosmos who invaded to take control of the sources of the elements for the entire cosmos launched a heavenly body into the setting, and a devastating strike that was very dangerous, but left behind this substance that now the setting uses as a currency. That's where shards come from. And your character starts with 110 shards to purchase gear. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I want to do is I want my priest to wear armor. I like that idea. They have a number of hit points that are higher than you normally would see a priest have, and physical armor acts as damage reduction. So when someone hits my cleric with an attack, if it is a physical attack, the physical armor will reduce the damage. So I think I'm going to go ahead and purchase light armor. Go ahead and write that here. And there we go. And 2. So there are 3 types of armor in the game. You have light, medium, and heavy. The light armor gives you 2 points of damage reduction, medium does 4, and heavy does 6. And armor also slows you down a little bit. So armor has something called max initiative. So when you generate your attack points by rolling one of your attack stats in the first round of combat, you also establish your initiative for the entire conflict. And the armor that you are wearing can possibly slow you down. So someone wearing light armor cannot have an initiative higher than 10. So what I do over here is I write 10 down, so I know that when I'm establishing my initiative, I can't have an initiative higher than 10 because the armor slows me down a little bit. Otherwise, whatever I rolled when I'm rolling my power is what I'm usually going to be rolling. I would have the ability to have an unlimited amount of armor. I'm sorry, an unlimited initiative because I'm completely unhindered by armor. But that's not the case. I want a little bit of armor just in case. And so that is my 110 shards. That costs me 10. So that brings me down to 100. Then I'm going to go ahead and buy my staff, my quarterstaff, which only costs 2 shards. So that brings me down to 108. Quarterstaff. It does strength plus 6, which is 10 damage. And it has a speed of 3, so I can attack 3 times with it. Has a stun check modifier of plus 9. And actually it can be thrown. If you want to throw it, melee weapons that aren't designed, this is a very heroic setting. So melee weapons that aren't necessarily designed to be thrown at range can still be thrown. And it's strength plus 1, so I can throw this 25 feet to deal damage with it if I were inclined to do so. Very heroic setting. So that is my weapon and my armor. Yes, I'm a priest and I have a weapon and an armor just in case. You can never be too careful when you're adventuring. Then I'm going to go over to adventuring gear and I'm going to get myself an adventurer's kit, which has rope and torches and rations. And that cost me 4. So I'm going to reduce this to 104. Then I'm going to get myself some antitoxin, which is going to protect against poisons. Again, as a priest, I want to be able to do a lot of healing, and I'm actually going to get 2 of those. That's going to cost me 50. So that brings me down to 54. Then I'm going to get some favor batteries. And favor batteries are devotional articles made of clay and blessed by priests. The batteries are prayed over and infused with blessings from the devout. Worshippers can use the item to strengthen their faith and wish for a blessing from their deity. So, as I said, invocations are cast using PowerPoints, and actually I should have 60 because of my prayer talent. And you can gain 20 PowerPoints back by using these devotional items. And they cost favor batteries. They're little clay discs that you can use. They cost 20 shards each, and I'm going to get 2 of them in case I have to replenish my PowerPoints for my invocations. So favor batteries cost 40. So that leaves me with 14. And I think, so I have antitoxin, adventurer's kit, armor, my favor batteries. Yeah, I think I have everything I'm going to need. And that's going to leave me with 14 shards to take into my first adventures. And that was step 8. So step 9 and 10 are left. They are going to be really quick. So step 10, or step 9, I should say, is determine your hero's drive. Now, what is drive? Now, drive, I'll read it right here for you, is an urge the hero possesses to complete a goal or satisfy a core belief. Drive in the game, a character's drive is a tool to create great role playing. When the player follows her hero's drive, she is awarded. During games, a GM may put situations in front of the hero, or events will just unfold that will test the hero's drive. If the hero responds in accordance with his hero's drive, the GM will award extra XP for good role playing. So I have to select a drive for my hero. Usually you have a hero has 12 drives to choose from, plus anything that the player can make up on their own. But because my hero is a priest, if I go back to the talent section and take a look at prayer, talent, what it says here is that, let me flip over, right here, priests and drive. The central tenet of court is balance. Without hardship, there can be no victory. Without darkness, there could be no light. Without death, there is no life. Evil is rejected by most followers of Cord, but evil is a necessity to test the devout. A priest hero is expected to stand against the foul, and for that reason, her drive is central to her standing with Cord. See step 9 in a hero creation for more details on a hero's drive. We were just there. A hero who selects the prayer talent must select a drive for his hero from the list below. If a priest hero goes two sessions consecutively without receiving XP rewards for adhering to his drive, he has fallen out of favor with Cord. At the beginning of the 3rd session, the priest loses the ability to regain power points using any method. So as a priest, I won't have a open selection of all 12 of the drives to choose from. At least if I want to stay in good standing with my God, I have to choose from this list, which is gain knowledge, preserve nature, or protect the innocent. And as an elf, I think it is very important that or would be very much in line if I chose preserve nature, because elves, as I said, are very much a part of the natural world, and that is very important to them. So I'm going to go ahead and write down preserve nature as the thing that will drive my priest character. And then the last thing, which I really can't do because I'm not making any other characters and I'm not making a party here, but I can go through it with you anyway. Last part, step number 10 is connection. Now, what is connection? If drive tells you why a hero does what he does, connection tells you why he does it with the other heroes. Connection links one hero to one other hero in the game. That gives the group some background and cohesion. For connection, a player must make 2 decisions, and that is select another hero in the party to have a strong connection with, and then justify why that connection exists. So that would be the last step of hero creation. Of course, I can't do it because I don't have any other characters, but if there were another human character in the group, I think I probably would have a connection with them, because this elf is so much tied to human culture because of his worship of the god Cord, that would make a lot of sense. But that is the last step of hero creation. I really like it. I haven't made a priest in a while for the game. I really like my elven priest. And I thank you very much for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And thanks a lot. Please check out the game, the basic edition of the game. Thank you.